Hello, everybody. Time for the second live stream of Reef Automation. Today we are discussing auto top-offs, auto water changes, and we're going to discuss my pros and cons on my new automatic calcium reactor that I installed last week and have been working on it for about 5 days now, trying to get it all tuned in. So, the first thing I'm planning on discussing is, as you can see, the Litermeter. I have two of these here, and they do my automatic water changes. They also do a number of other things that we're going to discuss in the live stream today. What's up, Peter? Good to see you. So, first off, the Litermeter is made by a company called SpectraPure. SpectraPure makes RODI systems. They make a number of different filters and all kinds of gizmos and gadgets. I am here in Arizona, and they are located here in Arizona. So, um, if you ever get a chance to come to Arizona, you can visit them and see their warehouse and see what they do. The big thing about SpectraPure over someone like Bulk Reef Supply or any of those other name brands out there is when they package their RODI filters, they actually test every single one of them. Um, when I was there, I got to see their testing facility, and all of their DI cartridges that they make, they run through a series of tests before they ship them out. They dry them out, and then they package them. And I recently decided to switch over to SpectraPure filters, and I can tell you with absolute certainty with my ICP testing that the SpectraPure filters have zero contaminants. I was using the Bulk Reef Supply anion, cation, and mixed bed setup in my 7-stage system, and unfortunately, I was getting all kinds of weird results. I was getting a lot of silica through them. I was getting some zinc actually through it. So I actually ended up switching over to 100% SpectraPure filters, and I've been really happy with them. Um, so the SpectraPure Litermeter is what we are going to focus on here in the beginning. The Litermeter has three pumps, and the pumps can pump almost. I've had these things pump 75 to 100 feet. They not only pump at 100 feet, 75 feet, but they also pump at a rate of between 150 and 200 milliliters a minute. So they are very fast and they are very strong. Um, and since using them, I have had limited issues with any type of water changing or any type of auto top-off systems. So the Litermeter will come with a built-in pump here on the left here, which is pump A. You can add remote pumps to pump B and C, which get plugged into the side, which I'll show you in a second. Um, and you calibrate each pump when you first get it, and then you assign what you want it to dose in a given day. So you could actually use these for dosing. Um, you can also use them for kalkwasser. You can use them for auto water change systems. You can use them for auto top-off systems. Um, there's a number of different solutions. So they run, they're pretty expensive. They run at a $300 cost. That includes just the one pump. But like I said, The biggest difference between this unit and, let's say, a dose, or let's say any other type of um, water change system, is the length at which it can go and the amount at which it does it. I use their pumps for my auto water changes. I use their pumps for my auto top offs in all of my tanks, and we'll go through that here in a second. Um, I use all of their Litermeter pumps for everything. So I don't know if they'll show you a picture here, but if we go back, you will see that Litermeter makes a number of different things. So the Litermeter itself is the unit here on the left, and that's 200. If you want to make remote pumps, they sell remote pumps for $1, about 140 bucks for the standard pump, and then 180 for the exchange module. Now, the exchange module is nice because this actually comes with a sensor, so that way this will shut off automatically if the water gets to a certain height, which is built into the unit. So these plug in, as you can see. I'll try to zoom in a little bit if it'll let me. These plug in via the 3.5 millimeter plug on the left into the Litermeter, and then you control them. So for instance, if you wanted to do, let's say, an automatic water change system, you would have the Litermeter unit, and you'd have an additional pump. This pump would pump, this would be close to your saltwater reservoir, for instance. And then the other one will be located at your tank itself. And then the tank itself will then output output to a drain, and this one will input new salt water. So that's a way that you can use it. I'm using my Litermeter specifically for two different things. I have a 300-gallon tank, and I use my Litermeter for an auto water change for my 300-gallon. So this guy's doing 20 liters per day water changing my 300-gallon tank, and it puts in new salt water every day for me. I'm using my additional Litermeter for changing water between my nano tank, which is in my office, and my Reef tank. So I'm actually exchanging water between the two tanks using the Litermeter. So it's kind of like taking a big pump and pumping it into one tank, and then taking the water out of the other tank and pumping into the other tank. And I do that all with the 1 Litermeter. So it's kind of neat. I really like their product, and they're really easy to program. They come with instructions, full instructions on how to calibrate it. So they also have a number of other things here. So they have the basic Litermeter dosing pump. Now this one I use for my auto water change, or my auto top off. So instead of running a a PM, an ATK, or a Tunes, or any of that, this has a plug. I plug it into my Apex, and then I have it using a high and low sensor from Apex, so it acts as my auto top off. But what's so great about this pump is the amount of water I can push from my garage all the way to my 300-gallon tank, which is like 75 feet away. So I could do an auto water change without needing a reservoir sitting next to my fish tank, which is really neat. So this one's just 120 volt powered. Has the same range, same power as the Litermeter pump. They also make one as well with the sensor as well built into the pump. What I don't like about this is generally in an auto top off setting, you're going to have your pump here located at the reservoir side, and you're not going to run an air tube 75 feet. So this particular system would be if you have your reservoir kind of sitting right next to the tank. So again, they make a bunch of other things. They make an overflow protection module, which all this does is shut off your Litermeter pump it's kind of an add-on if you had this guy over here, if you wanted to turn it off. They also have a powered one. Um, they do make some other things here, but I really wanted to just go over the Litermeter pumps. Again, they can go, I have these things pushing 100, easily 100 feet across my house, and they are quick and they are fast, and that's what I really like about it. Here in Arizona specifically, obviously it gets 160 in our attics. So the fact that I can push this amount of water at a quick pace will allow for the water to not heat up as much during the water changing. Um, the one con to the Litermeter that everyone should know is that it has to be programmed from the unit itself. So you can't program your Apex, for instance, to turn it on, or I'm sorry, to program how many milliliters it goes or when it goes on. So there's no way to know when this thing is going. And that's the only thing I don't like about it is there's no way for the Apex to know when this thing is running. I had to kind of trick my system to know when it's running, I want you to turn off kind of everything else. It gets powered by a 120 volt. So, for instance, if you had a high sensor or a low sensor, you can have your Apex shut this thing off completely so it stops pumping water if it was to get too high. So, Brian, your question is the basic programmable? I'm not sure what you mean. Do you mean the dosing pump programmable? This one here? This one is just a 120, so you'd program this on an Apex to turn on and off as you see fit. You can measure, of course, the milliliters per minute that this pump is pumping just by getting out a graduated cylinder or whatever, turn it on, get a stopwatch, figure out what its milliliters per minute is, and then you can program your Apex based on the milliliters per minute of this pump. But yes, it can be used as a dosing pump. It could be used as anything you want, um, which is really neat. So a couple other things, the Spectra Pure cells, like I said, they're really good with their RODI systems. Um, I would highly recommend if you guys are making your own RODI to really look at these guys. And I say that because of the issues I have had with bulk resins. They do sell bulk resins. They do sell a number of other things. I find that their cartridges, which are not cheap, will last you a lot longer than the bulk will last. I would say between 3 and 4 times. I'm usually having to swap these guys about every 3 months. I was swapping them at about every 2 or 3 weeks. And again, I'm making almost 100 gallons a week of water. They sell some pretty interesting RO systems. One of the RO systems they sell is the 20. Let me see if I can find it. The really big one. This thing's insane. So obviously the price is 20. This thing does 400 gallons per hour. However, when I saw this thing in action, you'll get a year, maybe 2 years out of each one of these cartridges before you have to replace them. It's pretty amazing, this unit. It's all a built-in unit too. Average milliliters per minute on those dosing pumps are between 150 milliliters to 200 milliliters per minute. So like I said, they are very fast. They do a lot of a lot of water quickly. Which, for like I said, for my purposes, they're fantastic. For auto top offs, they're fantastic. See what else we got. Again, they do sell bulk resin. I don't recommend any type of bulk resin any longer. Unfortunately, I've just been having some issues with my RODI, so I really haven't liked it. But they sell everything. They sell fittings, they sell valves, they sell check valves, they sell just on their website here. Um, let's see what else we got here. And this is spectrapure.com. You could buy directly from them. Like I said, they're located in Arizona, so I just walk over there when I got to pick up something, which is really nice. Um, but you know, they'll sell membranes and booster pumps and all that fun stuff. They're the nicest people too. For support, they are by far top of the line. If you have any issues, you just call them. And I've had guys come to my house and come help me, obviously. Um, I think a number of people are unfamiliar with SpectraPure just because they see a lot of bulk reef supply videos and so forth. But it's been great. Me, yep. So they do use roller heads, which you can replace and service pretty much anytime. And I always keep an extra Litermeter pump laying around in case one of mine were to die for any reason. Um, they get powered off of 12-volt power supplies, so those are easy to replace if the power supplies go out. Um, so, any questions on SpectraPure? Any questions on Litermeter? They sell a bunch of TDS meters and all kinds of stuff. Um, but like I said, I'm really happy with their support. So, what's up, Devin? Devin uses a SpectraPure uh, RODI system, which now I'm using. Let's see what else we got. Any questions on how to use it? It's pretty simple. I would say the first time you set it up, make sure you calibrate. I would calibrate it twice if you're going to be doing the Litermeter. Um, Basically, how it works is you got the pump. You can't see it here, but I'll try to explain it. You got the pump, you got the rate, you got the flow, and you got the status. So the pump is the pump number. It'll say A here. That'll tell you which pump you're adjusting. The rate is a fixed rate. So again, once you calibrate it, it's going to figure out what the rate is. And again, typically it's between 150 to 200 milliliters per minute, and that's based off of how far away it is, basically. The flow is where you set how much in a 24-hour period that you want it to dose. So, for instance, if you wanted to dose 1 milliliter or 1 liter a day of something, you could have it 1 liter. This will go down to milliliters as well. So you could have it dose, 50 milliliters a day if you wanted to. And the status will show you if it's running. If it's running on the flow rate, it'll also let you to just allow you to turn it just on or just off as you see fit. Um, Again, maybe one day I'll go into the Litermeter and demonstrate how to use it, but they're really easy to use. I haven't had any issues. So to Aaron's question, I have not replaced a pump since I've had one of these. I've had the Litermeter for 2 or 3 years. My auto top off that does my 100, I've had for about 3 or 4 years. Um, I've never touched the pumps. They recommend every 500 hours to clean them. I have never cleaned them, but that's what they recommend. So, yeah, Brian, the SpectraPure Litermeter is fantastic. I recommend anybody doing auto water changing or any type of long distance changing to have something similar to this. It's unfortunate that the P-ump or the P-ump apex, even the dose has a limitation on how far away it will actually go. And I have tested that. I had tried using a dose to do an auto water change, and unfortunately, it kind of started dying at about, I would say, 60 feet. It started to just kind of get bubbles up there, and we had a lot of issues with it. It's also, the dose is extremely slow compared to this liter meter. Um, you know, yeah, the Versa, I'm interested to see what kind of speed, noise, distance that it does. These things are super duper quiet. You don't even hear them. It's hard to even know when they're working. Um, and the amount of length that they can send water is quite astonishing. So, so any questions on the liter meter systems at all? Yeah, so this guy uses, let me see if I can get a manual here to show you. All their manuals are online, so you can check out whatever you want to check out on how to use everything. Um, let's see. So this is what the pump actually looks like inside. It's just 3 rollers inside. And they recommend, like I said, they recommend replacing the pump itself every 500 hours. I just don't do that. I don't see the point. It's been working really well for me. Um, so the set of master and slave. Now, the question that you're asking, if you're using a liter meter, it comes with one pump attached to it, and that's 290 here in the United States. So I don't know what that is in Canada. So that's just one unit with one pump. Um, if you then would need a slave, if you wanted to send water, and the slaves run 140 a piece. I have never replaced anything on any one of these pumps. I have not replaced the power supplies. I have not replaced the tubes. I have not replaced the hoses. I've had them for three years, some of them. They're amazing how long they last. The fact that they're so expensive will kind of give you an idea of how well built they are. They are heavy also. When you pick up one of these, you'd be surprised how heavy these magnetic pumps are. So you could do an auto water change with just 2 of the dosing pumps. So you could plug this guy into your apex, measure the milliliters per minute, plug in another one, measure the milliliters per minute, and just have them go on at the same time every day, and there's your auto water change. The liter meter does it for you basically, but that's a quick and a cheaper way to do it. Um, and there's really no masters or slaves because you set each pump to the amount that you need. So this pump, once you measure out what it actually has, the flow rate on it, you can set it to come on at some time. You can have the other one come on at whenever other time you want it to come on. The liter meter, like I said, the unit itself does all that for you. So these, you do all the configuration in here, whereas if you were to do the 120 volt option, you would have to measure the pumps, like I said, and you would have to use 120s to turn them on and off, whereas this turns them on and off for you based on the flow rate that you set. And again, I'm using the liter meter to do an auto water change between 2 fish tanks. So that allows me to have my nano share the water to my 100. So I don't have to test water on my nano any longer because I know it's the same water as my fish tank because I'm swapping like 14 gallons a day on the nano, which is a 7-gallon tank. So I'm doing basically a 200-gallon water change with the Reef water. So that's what I use my Litermeter for. They do plug into this. So there are ports on the side. Let me see if I can get that manual back up. They make a couple different versions. You can do the 120 version, which you just plug into a plug in the wall or an Apex, or you can use the Litermeter unit, which has on the side here C, B, and A, which are remote pumps. So they're 3.5 millimeter jacks that you plug into the side here, and they would be a remote pump. So for instance, this guy here is a remote pump. So it has the 3.5 millimeter jack. So that guy gets plugged into the side of the Litermeter, and then it knows which pump that is. That would be pump B. Obviously, the other idea is the 120 version, which this is a different pump. And that one you would program via the Apex instead. Yes, so yeah, the remote pump I guess would be considered a slave. You do not have to use the pump head that's actually attached to the unit here. You can use A right here, number 14, which disables the pump right here. So you actually can get 3 remote pumps plugged in, not 4, because then it disables this one, like I said. But yeah, you can have 3 remote pumps. Check out this TDS alarm. It lets you know when TDS goes over your desired amount. Yeah, I was talking to Neptune about a month ago, and they will more than likely be making a TDS monitor or an inline TDS. Yeah, Devin, you would have to calibrate all 3 separately, which the Litermeter does for you. Or, yeah, calibrate it. But yeah, they got all kinds of TDS stuff. Oh my God. Um, and I don't know if any of you have contacted them, but like I said earlier, they are the nicest people. They are so easy to work with. They will help you with any problems you have. Their warranty is fantastic. I've been on the phone with them for hours trying to fix stuff, just silly little things that I screwed up on. They will help you with the Litermeter. They will help you set it up completely. Like I said, luckily I'm local. They came out to my house and helped me get everything going. Let's see what kind of TDS stuff they have. They got all kinds of TDS stuff. Meters. I keep hitting the wrong button. Meters. There we go. Yeah, so they got single inlines. They got triple inlines. Um, they got the pass fail TDS meter here. They got the handheld TDS meters. Um, so they sell all kinds of stuff. So, any other questions on SpectraPeer before we move on to the next topic? So I recently, well, not recently, I purchased a automatic calcium reactor, actually based on watching Devin's stream. He had Bill Wan from Aquarium Engineering on about November, and I just got my unit last week. And if you're not familiar with it, I know he had Bill on, and I had a ton of questions after on how it works, how to set it up, how to configure it. But we got it all set up. It took about a week. I got it last Saturday actually. I started installing it, and I'm still tuning it. I'm still kind of getting it tuned in, but I'm really close to getting it where I need to. But we're going to kind of go over how it works, my opinion on it, some other interesting things to know about the difference between a calcium reactor such as this, seeing as they are triple the price of a standard reactor setup. So we'll start with the positives of the unit and my experience with the unit and how it all works. And then we'll kind of go over some of the things that I noticed about it that he doesn't mention in his videos, which I think are essential if you end up wanting to buy one of these. Keep in mind, it took literally 2 months to get it. So I bought it back in November and was anxiously waiting for it. Was counting down the days when I would get it, and unfortunately, it just took so long to get. And we got it. We got the wrong one the first time, unfortunately, and then he sent me the new one, and I sent the old one back. So let's go over a few things. So how it works, it comes with every one of the calcium reactors. They're called automatic calcium reactors for a reason. So we're going to go over why he calls them an automatic calcium reactor. So the one thing that you need to know, and I'm going to try to make this as big as I can, is this is it. This is all you need. It comes with this. Now, what I mean by this is you don't need a pH probe. You don't need to measure the pH. You don't need to measure the bubble count. You don't need to measure anything. So when he calls it an automatic calcium reactor, that is what is meant by automatic calcium reactor, is there is zero adjustments with the exception of this controller. And I'm going to open up some pictures of mine and how I have it set up. But everyone that's ever heard or ran or wanted interest into a calcium reactor knows, and how I learned about calcium reactors is you need to measure the pH. You need to measure the bubble count. You need to measure the flow. You need to measure. You don't need to do any of that with this. So that is what I love about this unit is you plug it in and that's it. There's nothing more to it. I got rid of my pH probe. I got rid of my Camor pump. I didn't need any of that anymore because this does the flow and it does the CO2 adjustments all for you. So how it works is you plug your CO2 tank in down in this left-hand corner, and then you plug the CO2 output into the reactor. You then plug the effluent to the tank right here, and the effluent from the reactor right here. That's it. That's the connections. It's quite simple. So this is what it looks like, and we're going to go over kind of how it works. This is the exact same unit I have. So there's a yellow tube up at the top here. That yellow tube gets plugged into the unit, and then it's got a recirculating pump here. Let me see if I can get down. Yeah, my computer's not doing so well. So what's nice about the double stack, which is what I have, is the top stack I put in my calcium reactor media. The bottom stack I put in my magnesium reactor media. So what's nice about that is you can actually see when your magnesium media is low. You can see when your reactor media is low, and you can swap out either one. It's actually quite easy. It's just a couple of thumb screws on the sides here. What's really nice about this unit, and I think is the best part of the unit, is on the side of the unit, which you can't see, there is an inlet right here that goes, and that's where you enter your water. So I forgot to mention that. So with this reactor, you actually have to send water into it via a pump, via just your return line. You can just tee off the return line. It doesn't matter what the flow is. It doesn't matter. You can have the flow at, I don't know, 400 gallons per hour going into this thing. It's going to actually cut off whatever you put into it automatically. You don't need to do anything. It's a pressurized unit. Um, so Brian, like I mentioned, mixing the media, you can obviously do that. But what's nice about the secondary way of doing this is you can monitor when your magnesium is low, you just replace your magnesium media. When your regular media is low, you just replace your regular media. So you don't have to worry about mixing it every single time, which is really nice for me. It just saves me an extra having to measure, whatever it is. I think it's 1 cup to 10 cups of the dolomite media over the reborn that I use, the regular media. So I like the fact that he does sell a unit that is a single stack that you could mix and just put your mixed media in it if you want to save some money. So what I was saying was there's a T line here. It's hard to see in the picture. So what's nice is, and what I love about this reactor is when you have to replace the media, you shut off the valve here. You pull the water out through the valve, and you just take the top off and you just replace the media. Does all the water come out of the media when you open up the magnesium? Does all the water come out of the media when you open up the area of the magnesium? Brian, I don't quite understand the question, but I think I understand it. So these sections, there's an area at the bottom here. When you remove this top area, these are completely separate. So as long as you drain the water using the T that I told you, this just comes right off, and then you put the media in. It's really quite simple, actually. And no, as long as you drain the water out, you're not going to have an issue. But you're going to have to drain the water out regardless if you want to put new media in anyways. So we'll go over kind of how it works. This is the recirculating pump. You have that running 24/7. It's a C-shape pump, so it's very quiet. I know Devin likes quiet, so it's very quiet. And how it works is the controller box, which we'll go back to, there's a number on the top here, and there is a number on the bottom. The top number, or the larger number, is when the reactor turns on, and the bottom number is when the reactor turns off. So how it works is this unit at the bottom here will inject CO2 as the reactor requests it. So there's a float valve inside the reactor which tells this unit, hey, I need more CO2. I've run out of CO2. It actually knows when it's run out of CO2 in the reactor, and it will then inject the CO2 and consistently keep the exact same pH and consistently have the exact same alkalinity inside this unit at all times. And then what you do is you alter how much you want to feed into the tank. So if I want to feed, I don't know, 2.5, 3.5 milliliters every hour, I would set this to the amount of time I need at the top that I want it on, and the amount of time I need it off. So it's kind of like an oscillator. So it goes on for a period of time, then it shuts off. Then it turns on, shuts off. So instead of a standard calcium reactor, which is running 24/7, which is consistently dropping water into the tank, this just drops water and stops. And stops for a long period of time. Drops water and then stops. And that's how the unit works. There's nothing more to it. There's absolutely no setup other than what I just said. You don't have to figure out the pH. You don't have to figure out the flow rates. You don't have to do anything. So what's really nice for me, and the reason I bought it, and I'm still working with it, is that the pH in the tank doesn't go down as much because you're not constantly dropping CO2 latent water into the unit all day long. You're only doing it for just a spurt of time throughout the day. So it essentially raises your pH because you're not putting this ridiculous amount of CO2 into your tank all day long. Again, I'm still tuning it. I'm still trying to get my pH going. I'm still trying to get my alkalinity going. I have this testing about every 2 hours now while I'm doing it. And all I'm doing is adjusting the numbers here, up and down, when it comes on and when it comes off. All right, so that's how it works. Does anybody have any questions on how it works? Any questions about anything on this guy? Because I would love to tell you how happy I am with it, but we're going to get to the cons here in a second. All right. So no questions on it, I'm presuming. Okay, so now let's go over a couple of things. So the first thing, yeah, I use Reborn, two little fishies. The first thing, he does not include a check valve with the incoming inlet of the water. So I learned the hard way. Since there is no check valve, you need to get a check valve. Because if your water coming into the tank, I'm sorry, your water going into the reactor was to shut off, the water that's inside this reactor is just going to go backfed right into your fish tank. So I learned the hard way. I turned off my return pump and my pH went from 7.9 to 7.3 within 15 minutes because all of this significantly low pH water drained down here into this pipe, into my tank. So if you ever get one of these, you have to make sure you get a check valve, which is not included. Very important. That's the first thing. The second thing, this box is not supposed to have water. Unfortunately, when I got it, this entire box filled with water and started leaking all over the place. So, very bad, very bad. There's a lot of electrical inside here. So I highly, highly recommend if you ever buy one of these that you open this secondary box, make sure all the connections are nice and tight, make sure that none of the tubes are loose whatsoever. Tighten them down, make sure everything is perfect, and then you won't get any leaks inside. But that was very scary because this whole thing, I could hear hissing noises, I can hear the CO2 coming out of it. It was really bad. Yeah, Brian, does not come with a check valve, surprisingly. So you need to get a check valve, especially for what happened to me. Also, if you get the ACR, which is the double unit here, I'm sorry, the stacked ACR, make sure that you lubricate the O-ring right here. There is an O-ring between the top section and the bottom section. This thing was leaking from this area right here. So I had to open up the whole thing, drain the whole thing, lubricate the O-ring, clean the O-ring, tighten these suckers down, and then it stopped leaking. So unfortunately, I had to go through that. The other thing that you can't see from this picture, let me see if I can get a better picture. This is very important if you use this unit. I don't think he has a picture of it, unfortunately. So this yellow tube right here connects to this tube down here. There's a tube that goes in here and it connects to this tube right here. It is barely held on, and when I mean barely held on, it just slides right off. If you tap it, if you nick it, I would highly recommend that you zip tie it or put a clamp on it, because if this thing comes loose, which it came loose many times for me, the whole entire reactor will flood. This bottom section will keep pushing water out. So like I said, the unit is very great, or very good. However, there's a couple caveats that you need to be aware of that there's no way to know. Also, the unit doesn't come with instructions, period. No instructions. So a lot of this was a lot of phone calls and a lot of just talking to people and learning about it. So I agree with Peter there. For the cost, there's a lot of things that I think a check valve should come with it. I think there's a lot of quality control issues here. But anyway, what I really like I said, is there's no need for any sort of bubble counter. There's no need for a pH probe, which is really nice. It's got a lot of great things. But when you first get it, I had a ton of leaks and a ton of problems getting it all going. Now I got it pretty much going, so I'm pretty happy with it after all the fun that I had to experience. Also, waiting 2 months for it, getting the wrong one was frustrating. Luckily, I was able to get the new one, and the new one fit perfectly. It's working great. Just make sure, like I said, you check all of the connections, make sure there's no leaks. I would highly recommend that you pressure test it before you actually put it in the fish tank. I would, put it in your garage or something, run some water through it, test for leaks, test for anything, test for the control, make sure it's working properly. That way you don't dump this low pH like I did and freak out that your tank went from 7.9 to 7.3, because that was extremely scary. And I might even be able to show you the drop here, because it wasn't very long ago. Let's see. It only gives me a week worth. Yeah, there was a drop there. Yeah, I don't think I can get any more than this, but yeah, it went to 7.3, which was extremely scary. Oh, I can go back. Look at that. I'm learning something new. I went back way too far. Let me restart this so I can show you this drop. It was quite significant. It was not like here's the drop. It wasn't like over a period of an hour. Like, this is in a period of about 10 minutes. It went from 8.2 to 7.3. Look at this. Check valve. I can't stress it enough. This isn't a matter of, look at this. This isn't a matter of 5 minutes almost. Maybe more like 10 minutes. 8.2, 7.3. Luckily, I was able to get it back up with some dosing and some other stuff. And we had no losses, thank God. But yeah, you got to be really careful with this unit. So, and again, check valve, check valve. That was the problem. That was the problem. So now I have a check valve. So let me see if I can pull up some pictures of my unit. Unfortunately, the camera I have, I might be getting a wireless one, but unfortunately, the camera I have right now, I'm in my office, so I wouldn't be able to show you the whole setup. But I do have a lot of pictures, and I can show you kind of how it all works. So just give me a moment here. So you'll see here that I put a check valve right at the manifold input right here. This is before I put the check valve in, by the way. That is not a check valve, but there's a check valve now right there going into the unit. I did put a T here, so this way, this just makes it easier for me to extract the water if I needed to, instead of having to unplug all this, and I just put a tube on here, flip this on, and then I can take all the water out, which is going to make it easier for me. But what's really cool, like I said, is it just takes water from my manifold, and that's it. There's nothing more to it. So the regulator setup is very simple. There's no bubble counter, like I said. There's no need for a bubble counter. So all I'm doing is feeding the CO2 directly from the unit, and then I keep the solenoid on all the time. I've been reading some places that a lot of people like to kill the CO2 when the unit powers off, but there's no need to, because this only injects CO2 when it needs it. Well, for me, Brian, yeah, to get to the media is a nightmare because of my setup. I'd have to take the whole thing out. But for you, if you have this thing just sitting next to your sump, it's really quite easy. But for me, yeah, I got a lot of stuff. It does not come with a regulator, so you need to get a regulator, and any regulator will work. So there's a couple issues I had where the water line was going down. We fixed that. There's a lot of little silly things. This water line should usually be, much higher up here when you use it. You can see my check valve install. So there's the check valve that I put in now. So now it won't backfeed into my tank. Let's see what else. Yeah, so there's the controller. You can see the top number and the bottom number there. That's how you know it's working. I forgot to mention another thing. So when I first got the unit, the power didn't work. Power didn't work at all. I plugged it in, power didn't work. The power supply that came with the unit was completely dead. So, I called up the owner. I was like, hey, the power supply doesn't do anything. I tested it with my meter, no power, no 12 volt, nothing. I was like, this is crazy, no power supply. So luckily, this uses a 12 volt, 3 amp, and luckily I had a power supply. Plugged it in, still didn't work. It's like, fantastic. Waited 2 months and it won't power on. That was the first thing that happened when I first got it. So lo and behold, I had to open up this controller, and the positive and negative were switched. So I opened up the controller, I switched to positive and negative, and then everything started working. So it's been like I said, it's a fantastic unit when it works, now that it's working. But setting it up and all these things I had go wrong with it, I can only tell everyone that's interested in one to check valve, check the connections inside the boxes, make sure they're all nice and tight. That's the only thing I can say. But anyway, the top, like I said, here's the top, and it counts down. It says 0 right now because it actually counts down. The bottom number then counts down as well, and you can see it counting down. And maybe I'll take a video of it kind of working so you can see it. But yeah. So quality aside from issue. So like I began with the conversation, the fact that you don't have to calibrate a pH probe, replace a pH probe, work with a pH probe, adjust a pH probe is amazing. You don't have to adjust bubble counts. You don't have to adjust the CO2 count. You don't have to adjust anything. You just plug it in. Again, aside from all the leaks, You plug it in, done. There's nothing more to it. There's none of this tuning. I mean, there's tuning. You have to adjust how much the timer goes, and you have to check that. But you have absolutely no reason to need an apex to make it work. You don't need. It just does what it does by itself. You don't have to worry about, oh, am I putting in too much CO2? Um, my pH is too high or too low, or my flow is not working, or my flow got clogged, or my flow isn't enough, and you don't have to worry about any of that. There is no flow with this. Um, it it outputs what it needs when you tell it to based on the timer, which is really cool. They have all kinds of sizes. Of course, I got the 8-inch, which unfortunately I ordered the 6-inch, but the 8-inch is gigantic. They have a 10-inch. And when I say gigantic, let me inform you that this thing is huge. um, I would say this. I would say I don't even know if he puts it on here. I would say the 6-inch would be perfectly fine, just based on how much alkalinity it actually can spout out and how much adjustment it can do. I would have to really believe the 6-inch that I have can do a 400-gallon tank with no problems, with absolutely no problems. If you had this 8-inch, I'm going to say that thing can do 1,500 gallons easy. I mean, it's gigantic. It's like, I want to say 35 inches tall by, it's not 8 inches, the cylinder is 8 inches, but the unit itself is probably a foot wide. It's probably like this wide. And that's the one that I originally got, and I stood next to it, and it came up to like my shoulder, to my belly, and I'm not a tall guy, but I was like, this thing's gigantic. Um, Obviously, with you saw my pictures. Obviously, with the amount of space I had, there was absolutely no way I was going to get that 8-inch to fit. There was no way. Um, Yes, the materials on this thing are extremely good. This thing is extremely heavy. I think it's about 70 pounds. The unit I have is about 70 pounds. It feels like putting this in the tank. Let me open up my photos again here for you so you can see. Um, Putting this in the tank was for me very difficult to get it over and in. And this thing weighs, like I said, like I think the 6-inch is more like a 50-pounder. The 8-inch is definitely 70 pounds. But to get this in here was quite difficult. Um, but he does make a 10-inch, which I would think would be more than enough for like a 3,000-gallon fish tank. I mean, you saw my pH drop. You got to remember when the pH dropped, also the alkalinity went up. I think it went up a full DKH in that 5 seconds or 5 minutes, from the amount of alkalinity this thing pushes out. So uh, it's quite astonishing, actually, how powerful it is. Um, so, but yeah, that's the Aquarium Engineering calcium reactor. He also makes protein skimmers, denitrators. Um, I'm trying to be as honest as I can. Uh, it's gonna take a long time to get it. They also have a 4-inch as well, but it's gonna take a long time to get it. So if you buy it, plan on waiting 2 months. Plan on, you know, the support is kind of, here and there. Unfortunately, I believe Bill, the owner, is a one-man show, so um, getting a hold of him can be a little difficult. I ran into a number of issues in the beginning, but now everything is working really well, so I'm pretty happy with it. Um, but again, it's for those that know me, I like automatic. I like automated. I like things that don't have to give you know, any adjustments whatsoever. I just put it in, don't have to worry about it. The whole point of Reef automation. And I wanted to go over the automatic calcium reactor because indeed it is automatic. You don't have to really do much other than plug it in. I mean, there's really not much to it if you don't have leaks, but plug it in. That's all you gotta do. So, um, any questions about it? Any questions about Apex? I know last week we discussed the when statement. We discussed the error statement. I just wanted to um, see if anybody had any additional questions from last week's demonstration. Um, but I've heard a lot of people starting to use it now, which is really great. Let's see. So, yeah, I mean, those are my two new toys, the automatic calcium reactor and the Litermeter doing my nano tank, which has been fantastic. I really enjoy not having to test two fish tanks anymore. Um, I think that if anyone's looking for a calcium reactor and they want to not have to deal with all this tuning, and adjustments, uh, this thing is so easy to use once it's all working. And it doesn't require an apex, doesn't require anything. Um, my personal recommendation, however, is to plug it into your apex, and if the pH was to drop, like it did in mine, make sure it's killing that unit. Um, Make sure that if your alkalinity goes up, it's killing the unit. There's a lot of things that you can do with it with the apex, but it really does not need an apex. You could just run it by itself. Whereas I really believe that you need a controller when you have a standard, calcium reactor. A lot of people just will get a pH controller, but um, I used to run my Apex on my Trident, and I don't have to do that anymore. This thing kind of just does it for me. I'm still tuning it in. I'm still getting the numbers correct. I'm still tuning in the pH, but I'm seeing higher pH numbers than I've ever seen with the unit, which is great. Because calcium reactors, the one flaw that people have is their pH is just tanks because you're 24/7 dripping, 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 dripping. What's nice is this thing just only will go at a certain interval throughout the day. I mean, you can even turn it off and on, which is fantastic. So if your pH was to go too low, you can just turn it off, um, and then it'll turn right back on right when you need the pH to, or you need the alkalinity as the alkalinity goes down. So there's a lot of programming wise on the Apex that I might do with it, but for now I'm just uh, trying to make it work without any leaks. Um, yeah, I have a refugium now. I don't know if anyone saw that in the pictures. I did make a drastic change to my system. Um, I got rid of my turf scrubber, which not because I didn't like it. I did like it, but it was just too efficient for my tank. I was struggling very much so getting it to maintain the nutrients in my tank. I also added Miracle Mud, as you might be able to see at the bottom. I'm doing some trials with the Miracle Mud. With ICP to see indeed if the Miracle Mud does produce the trace elements to maintain the tank without having to dose trace elements. For those that don't know, people that have calcium reactors, you do not get your trace elements. Um, and I can tell you from the ICP testing that once I removed my trace element dosing, the ICP did indeed show me my trace elements that were dropping. So I started adding trace elements, and then I heard about Miracle Mud. The Miracle Mud's supposed to provide all the trace elements, and then you don't have to dose trace elements. I don't know yet. I'm still waiting on ICP testing from. I actually sent ICP testing in right when I put the Miracle Mud in, and then a week later I sent in an ICP test. So after a week, I'm going to know if indeed the trace elements are maintaining, which will be great. But I can tell you the algae turf scrubber was stripping my nutrients. All my acros were looking kind of dull. It was usually 0 phosphate, 0 nitrate, almost on a daily. Now for about 2 weeks straight since I put the Chaeto in, um, I am maintaining nutrients and I'm noticing significant color in my acros now that I haven't seen in a long time. So the Miracle Mud, a couple of questions. The first question is the roller mat. The roller mat is fantastic. So here's the other thing. The roller mat itself is a nutrient export. A lot of people don't know this, but when you have a roller mat, you actually are reducing your nutrients by using the roller mat. So what was happening with my tank is I have a Nios 160, which is too big for my tank, and a roller mat. So what was happening was my nutrients were just 0 all the time because the roller mat was taking out the nitrogen and the skimmer was taking out the nitrogen. And then I got an algae turf scrubber that's taking out the nitrogen. So all of my nutrients were going down. So if you use a roller mat, just be prepared to lower your other nutrient export functions. So for instance, if you're using Chaeto, my light cycle is actually very low because I don't need a high light cycle because the roller mat itself is doing what I need it to do. And then of course the skimmer. So I love the roller mat. In terms of where the Miracle Mud is, so I opted to not just toss Miracle Mud into the sump and make a layer. I don't know if you can see, but these are little containers with the Miracle Mud, and they sell them like this. You can actually buy them in the containers, and it makes it so much easier because then you don't have to worry about having a pile of Miracle Mud because according to the website, it says that you're supposed to replace 50% of the Miracle Mud every year. So just having them in these little containers, boom, you just pull it out, pull a new one in, much easier. So that's where my Miracle Mud is. Aaron, let me see if I have a picture of the lights. I don't believe I do. Here's a better picture of the Miracle Mud. This is before I put the Chaeto in. So they're in these little, I don't know, plastic containers. Is what they are, and water flows through it, and that's how it works. And notice I have my heater right there, so I didn't want to put a pile of Miracle Mud here and then the heater, and it'll be a whole mess. Aaron, I don't know if I have a picture of the lights anymore. I might have them in my deleted. There we go. That one, recover. Let's see. That's not a great picture either. So I'm using the Santa Monica gems is what they're called. And the reason I'm using them, let me see if I can find them, is because they can be put inside the sump. I was really happy with the fact that you could put these inside the sump, and they are waterproof, which is awesome. So these are what I'm using. So I have these little sticks that I can put inside the sump anywhere I want. They come in black, they come in white. They are ridiculous bright. I've blinded myself with them. I got one here facing the Chaeto. I got one here facing down on the Chaeto, and I don't know if you could see it from my other picture, but I will try. There is one here facing on the right side of the Cato. There's one on the left side facing the Cato. There's one on top facing the Cato. And I'm debating whether or not to put a fourth one underneath the Cato, or put it on the right, another one on the right side. But that's what's so great about these gems is you can put them anywhere in the sump, in the water. And I'm seeing absolutely no whitening on this Cato, period. Like it's 100% green throughout the whole thing. This grew, you could see right here, this grew to a ridiculous amount in literally a week. Like it was the size of maybe 2 hand fists, and it grew to my entire refugium in a week. So, yes, the circle of light. That's exactly what it is. Um, yeah, so the algae turf scrubber was great. I really liked it, but it was it's just too efficient. It really was. I wish I had a picture of the Cato when I first got it. Oh my goodness. Let me look at my deleted. Let's see if I have anything here. Like literally when I first got it. I don't know if I have any pictures of it, but let's see. I mean, it grew like a ridiculous amount. I don't think I have any pictures of it. Anyway, I actually got my Cato from Aaron, so there you go. That's kind of, I mean, you can see the spacing here. This is kind of what it used to look like, and then I showed you the picture earlier. Like this is in a week, it grew like this. Here's my new clam. I got a couple new things. My new Scully and my Nano. Been taking some pictures of it. Yeah. So anyway, well, we've been on for what, an hour and a half almost. So I'm gonna call it unless anybody's got any questions while I'm here. Yeah, the gems are kind of expensive. You know, I'm always a go big or go home on my fish tanks. I spend a lot of money on them, but I noticed in our hobby, if you don't spend the money on stuff, sometimes you get junk. So I'm all about getting good quality products. So any questions on Apex? Any questions on what we discussed today? Otherwise, I'm going to get going. Yeah, it's been very stable. Now, if I can just get this calcium reactor to be stable, I will be happy. I think I got it though. Over the last couple days, testing every couple hours, having a trident, it makes tuning a calcium reactor very easy. So, well, I'm glad the stream didn't cut out today, and I'm glad everybody could hear me and everybody can see me, and I'm glad I was able to show everybody some cool stuff. But yeah, if you have any questions about anything, you know where to get me, and leaving comments or whatnot on the video. But hope everybody has a great Saturday, and look forward to the next one, probably the same time next week, unless people decide they want a different time. And we'll talk about something more fun next week. So, anyway, have a good day, everybody.